Are you about to embark on your first backpacking adventure but are curious about what a hostel is and how it works? Don't worry, I was the same way. I remember the first time I stayed at a hostel in Morocco and I was super overwhelmed, but I ended up falling in love with hostels and that way of traveling, and I haven't stopped since. Here's a guide to help you with your first time staying in a hostel. So first things first, how do hostels work? You know, for a hotel, you book the entire room for the night, right? Well, in a hostel, you're actually booking a bed inside of a room for the night. So this is called a dorm room. And typically a dorm room consists of a couple of bunk beds, you get your bed that you paid for, and the rest is filled with other travelers. For some people, this might be a little weird or you might feel like it's unsafe, but I promise you it's completely safe and super normal in the travel world. I've been staying in hostels for all my travels for like 7-ish years now, and I've never, ever had a problem with safety. You know, pretty much the only people who are staying in hostels are people just like you. You know, they're backpackers who don't have a lot of money but have a desire to see as much of the world as possible. A lot of hostels even have lockers in the room so you can bring your own lock and lock away all your stuff to help make you feel even safer. Each hostel you book will of course be different, but typically all hostels either have a 4, 6, 8, 10, or 12 dorm bedroom, and they usually have the options of mixed or just female. Of course, the lower the number of beds in the room, the more expensive it is, and vice versa. I've actually stayed in a dorm room before that had 30 beds, which actually wasn't as bad as I thought. So really just depends who your roommates are for the night. If I'm traveling with my boyfriend, we obviously pick a mixed dorm room because that's the only option we have. But if I'm traveling alone, I always pick a female only dorm, as long as it's not, you know, crazily more expensive than the mixed dorm. Generally speaking, you know, female only dorms are a lot cleaner, no one snores, and it just gives you that extra sense of security since you're traveling alone. Now let's talk about where to book. So you can book on Booking.com, Hostelworld, or Agoda. Obviously, I always go with whichever one's the cheapest, but if they are around the same price, I usually go with Booking.com. This is just my personal preference because I like that you don't have to pay a deposit to hold your reservation, and you sometimes have the option to fully pay for your booking online with a credit card and get those credit card points instead of paying in cash when you arrive. Also, Booking.com has their reviews organized in positives and negatives, so it's really easy for me to scroll through and see all the negative things about the place before I book and kind of help me make my decision. Hostelworld has a ton of options, but the only reason why I don't really like them as much as Booking is because you always have to pay a deposit when you book, and if you cancel your booking, you never get that deposit back. So it's usually only like $1 or $2, but you know, that adds up. Plus, for the most part, you can't really pay online fully for your stay. You usually always have to pay when you arrive at the hostel. Now let's dive into what you should look for when you're booking. Obviously, this is a personal preference of what kind of experience you're kind of looking for. Do you want a social hostel with lots of parties and pub crawls? Do you want a pod or a capsule hostel so you can maximize your privacy? Do you want to be close to the downtown, in the city center, or farther away in the nature? These are all things that you can easily look for before you book your hostel. So here's my personal process when I'm booking a hostel. First off, I start off by filtering all the hostels in order from cheapest to most expensive. Then I'll set the filters to have all of them only be a rating of 8 out of 10 and above, and less than 1 kilometer to the city center. And then I'll start to scroll through, see the pictures, see if I kind of like the vibe. If I do like the vibe, I'll start to read the reviews, and you know, I make sure that there's no extreme problems. The main things I personally look for are cleanliness and the party scene, because I personally don't like staying at party hostels. I feel like I don't get enough sleep and I just want some peace and quiet sometimes. And the last thing I look for besides those two things is the proximity to restaurants and different sightseeing, things that I want to see. So, you know, if I like the vibe, it kind of checks all my boxes, I'll go ahead and add it to my list. You can create a favorites list for anywhere that you're planning on going. And you know, usually I'll have at least 3 or 4 places saved in my list, and then once, you know, I give it a day, I, you know, think about it, I kind of clear my mind, then I'll go through my list again, and I'll just base my decision based on, you know, the vibe and the pictures, because I already know if they're saved in my list, they meet all the criteria that I want. 8 out of 10, super clean, close to the downtown, probably not a party hostel. So I personally try as much as possible to pick pod or capsule hostels because I love the privacy that you get. It really does make me feel like I have my own room when I'm not paying for my own room, so that's really nice. So if you like having your privacy as well, well, that's something that you're going to want to look into. Pod and capsule hostels are the best. Another thing to note, if you are traveling in a group of 2 or 3, make sure to check the prices of private rooms in hostels too. In a lot of countries, Nick and I found that it was actually cheaper for us to get a private room in a hostel rather than pay for 2 beds in a dorm room. So, you know, always look at all your options and weigh them out. Now let's dive into what you should expect when you stay in a hostel, and we'll go ahead and we'll start with the positives. So you will meet lots of awesome people, both inside your room and in the common areas, and even the workers. This is personally my favorite part of staying in a hostel. You know, you can swap stories, you can get advice on what to do in this place, or even change your travel plans to go somewhere that they told you about that you had never even heard of, which are always tend to be the best parts of your trip. I remember my first hostel experience was in Marrakesh, Morocco. My friend and I ended up becoming really good friends with the main worker at the hostel. He was a local Moroccan man. He traveled all over the world playing music, and you know, we swapped amazing stories. We listened to him play guitar, we smoked hookah up on the rooftop. It was so beautiful with all the views around us. And even one night he cooked us a traditional Moroccan meal, lamb tangine, and it was incredible. It was such a local, authentic experience, and absolutely my favorite part of Morocco. And it was all just because of the hostel that I decided to stay in. Next up, we have cool vibes. So a lot of hostels offer, you know, common areas with games, a pool, a bar, you know, just a bunch of beanbag chairs, hammocks. It's just a really nice place to enjoy your travels. 2 hostels in particular stick out to me when I think of cool vibes in my past. First is this treehouse hostel that I stayed at in Manuel Antonio, Costa Rica. It was just so cool. You know, there's hammocks everywhere, you're close to the beach. It just totally felt like you had escaped reality and you were up above, like looking down on the real life world. And another one was in Siem Reap, Cambodia, that has this beautiful pool, a swim-up bar, an on-site restaurant. They had tons of events at the hostel, like movie nights and pub crawls, which was super fun. So in general, I just feel like you get a little more personality, a little more cool vibes when you stay at hostels instead of hotels. And like I said before, it is a lot more social and you can meet a lot more people because of these things. And of course, you're saving money, right? So obviously you're saving money by just booking a hostel bed rather than an entire hotel room. So now you have more money to go out and do more things during your travels. I remember when I was solo traveling in Bali and I had been staying in hostels, you know, for a long time. So I decided to treat myself to a hotel just for 2 nights, and the price difference was huge. So I had been staying in dorm beds for about $2 to $4 a night, and the hotel I got was just like right under $20. So I know you're probably thinking $20, like that's so cheap. But when you're just solo backpacking for as long as your money can last, you just cut your trip short by like 5 to 10 nights just from making that one decision. So it really is crazy how much cheaper it is, therefore how much longer you can last on a backpacking trip when you choose hostels instead of hotels. So now let's move on to the negatives. So obviously you never know how your roommates are gonna be. You could have some problems with them being messy, smelly, snoring, or even coming home late or waking up super early and being loud. I even had someone who was in the bed above me, and he came home at 4 a.m. after partying all night with a girl, and they proceeded to have sex in the bunk bed above me, and it was awful. Like, it was so awful. So that's when I actually stopped staying in party hostels. But you know, that's the tough part about hostels in general. Like, you never know how loud people are gonna be, how respectful they're gonna be to the other people in their room. Are they gonna snore really loud and keep you up at night? So it's just a toss-up. You really don't know. And sometimes the cleanliness levels can also be quite low, especially in the shared bathroom. So I have 2 solutions for this that kind of work. First is I actually prefer to book dorm rooms that don't have an ensuite bathroom, like just have a big bathroom for the entire floor or whatnot. One, because in my experience it tends to get cleaned more frequently since it is an open common space. And 2, people don't wake you up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, which is really nice. And second is, if you are a female, book an all-female dorm room like I mentioned kind of briefly earlier. Whenever I'm not with my boyfriend and I'm traveling solo, this is always what I do. If there's an option for a female dorm, that's what I'm gonna choose. Because it not only helps with this point of cleanliness, but also usually women don't snore and are more respectful and quiet when it comes home to waking up early to pack for, you know, a 3-4 a.m. flight or coming home super late after partying, whatever it is. You know, obviously I am generalizing here. There are guys who are clean and guys who don't snore, but I'm telling you, every single time I've had someone snore so loud in my hostel room that I cannot sleep for the entire night, or they come home in the middle of the night, super disrespectful. It's always been a dude, I'm sorry. So stay in all female dorms whenever you can. Like I said in the beginning of this video, staying in hostels can save you a ton of money when traveling and allow you to travel for longer periods of time. So now let's go ahead and take a look at these other 20 budget travel hacks to save you even more money.